Hello, I'm Eliyahu. In 2015, all the nations of the world, making up the United Nations General Assembly, voted to adopt the UN 2030 Agenda. The 2030 Agenda will establish a globalist government over the whole earth that claims ownership over the earth and all its resources, including the people. This world takeover is scheduled to occur in 2030, now only about a decade away. The globalist vision of the 2030 Agenda perfectly matches the prophecies of the Bible about the creation of a beast system to rule the whole world. That's why in 2015, I released this video seminar to warn people of the globalist Antichrist government that is scheduled to literally take over the world by 2030. This is a crisis for every person on earth. On March 7th, 2016, I presented more on the push toward the globalist utopia planned by 2030. This time, highlighting the technology the elite are developing to control the entire human race. The overarching term for this change is transhumanism. Now, in 2019, only 3 years later, great strides in technology have already been made toward achieving the transhumanist future envisioned by the globalist elite. In this presentation, we will examine excerpts from the 2016 message and compare them to excerpts from videos by the technocratic elite revealing major breakthroughs in technology they have produced in only the last 3 years. When you compare these major technological breakthroughs, all leading toward a globalist, transhumanist future, now only a decade away, I believe you will see that this is not a conspiracy theory or a false alarm. You will see that the globalist elite are hard at work building the beast. Now, here is the first video excerpt from the 2016 message.
Excerpt from Eliyahu ben David, Prepare for the World of 2030, dated March 7th, 2016.
Here's how man started in the garden. Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created him, male and female, he created them. I would think if you were created in the image of the Creator himself, then that would be hard to improve on. In fact, impossible, because you're in the Creator's image, right? Well, not everybody agrees with that. Not everybody thinks that Yahweh's creation is perfect. For instance, this guy, Ray Kurzweil, he thinks we're all going to be cyborgs by 2030. He has very little regard for the human body. He thinks it's very flawed in its design. He thinks we should all be a lot more like computers. Before you dismiss him as some kind of an idiot, realize he's a futurist and Google engineer. It's not a surprise he works for Google, is it? And he predicted that humans will be cyborgs by 2030. And the idea is to enhance human beings to make them better than they are. In fact, there's an evolutionary idea here that this is how they're going to break through the barrier, and that we will become something beyond human. Here's a picture next to Ray of a guy that has taken this very seriously. You see that thing coming out of his head that looks a lot like a desk lamp? Well, that really is attached to his head. It goes right into his head, into his brain. And that makes him a cyborg. And he has a camera. But it's a special kind of camera. It allows him to see colors on the spectrum that an ordinary human can't see. It's a lot like a dog is able to hear a sound that we as humans can't hear. And for him, he's an artist. He thought, okay, why don't I just improve my ability of sight by having this attached into my head? I don't know how he sleeps at night, and I'm sure he has other problems, but that's what he's done. And you know, it's a lot of young people. It's interesting. You've got an old guy like Kurzweil here. These guys are the ones that are the dreamers. They're the leaders, these old people. And a big part of that is because they don't want to die. And who does? And they're hoping that this movement will save their lives. But it's these young people that are affected by it. There are just waves and waves of these young people who have taken this ideology to heart, and they're totally ready to start mutilating their bodies in order to add in all of this bizarre technology.
Shortly after those 2016 comments, Elon Musk made a startling suggestion and gave us his reason why all of us need to be cyborgs.
I think there's a lot of innovation happening in many different areas. The advancements in AI, I think, are quite astonishing. Going back to the AI situation, this is quite important. If you assume any rate of advancement in AI, we will be left behind by a lot. And so then we could be in, benign, but even the benign situation, if you have if you have ultra intelligent AI, we would be, so far below them in intelligence that it would be like, a pet, basically.
Cat, that's what I was thinking.
Like a pet.
Cat,
like a cat. It would be
Elon
like
the
a house cat. Yeah, it
right.
would be like the house cat.
Right.
It's not the end of the world, It's just,
Well,
sort of pet.
You've seen the movie, it could be. Yeah.
It could be.
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate. Humans, who are limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded.
I mean, I don't love the idea of being a house cat.
Okay.
But
So what's the solution?
I think it's to essentially, I think one of the solutions that seems maybe the best one is to have an AI layer, 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 to have an AI layer. If you think of like you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and then a digital layer, sort of a third layer above the cortex, that could work well and symbiotically with you. I mean, just as your cortex works symbiotically with your limbic system, your sort of a third digital layer could work symbiotically with the rest.
This is something that's surgically inserted or bred into the species, or what?
The fundamental limitation is input-output. So we already have, we're already a cyborg. It's just that, I mean, you have a digital version of yourself or partial version of yourself online in the form of your emails and your social media and all the things that you do. That you can answer any question. You can video conference with anyone anywhere. You can send a message to millions of people instantly. But the constraint is input output. So we're I/O bound. Your output level is so low. It's like, particularly on a phone, like your two thumbs just sort of tapping away. This is ridiculously slow. Mostly, effectively merging in a symbiotic way with digital intelligence revolves around eliminating the I/O constraint. So it'd be some sort of direct cortical interface. Some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons, particularly. It doesn't involve it doesn't involve, you know, like chopping your skull off or anything like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
And plus, you're not a house cat anymore, right?
Not a house cat. So,
Right.
I mean, essentially, if we can figure out how to establish a high bandwidth neural interface, then you're no longer a house cat. You know?
All right. On that note.
Well, just one closing thing.
I mean, I think that's probably the benign outcome. That's probably the best outcome, I think.
Are you interested in exploring this possibility that you have just laid?
So somebody's got to do it. So somebody should do it. And I mean, if somebody doesn't do it, then I think I should probably do it. But
and the goal of this is to prevent there being an external AI, particularly one controlled by a small group of people that could be so much more powerful and intelligent than we are that the house cat
it would be godlike in its
situation
capability.
occurs.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward from 2016 to July 2019.
In July of 2019, Elon Musk had a presentation detailing the Neuralink project. Earlier in the year, on the Joe Rogan podcast, Musk said that there was a big announcement coming, and this was it. So what is the Neuralink? Musk states that human cognition has two major systems. The limbic system, where our emotions, needs, and wants are processed, and then the cortex, which involves thinking and planning. The neural link in its final form is to be a third layer on top of this, a digital superintelligence layer, augmenting ourselves with computers and eventually artificial intelligence. Depending on how you look at it, we already have this layer in the form of our phones and laptops. You've all heard the saying that we have all of the world's information at our fingertips. The bottleneck in all of this is how we interface with that information. Fingers and speech are too slow and a very low bandwidth form of communication between us and our devices. A much faster way to get to this information would be directly. This is called the brain-machine interface, and the Neuralink is an effort to solve this problem. It's already been a massive multidisciplinary effort. It includes scientists, doctors, electrical engineers, surgeons, and more. So how does it work? So our brain consists of neurons firing all the time in response to electrical signals sent when we see, hear, move, talk, or think. Whenever a neuron fires from these electrical signals, a tiny electromagnetic field is present. Basically, Neuralink is going to tap into these tiny electric fields generated at synapse junctions in the brain. It's going to interpret this analog data as ones and zeros to be used in the digital world. The neuron pulses will be detected using tiny threads, about 1/10 the cross-section of a human hair, or about the size of a neuron. Each thread is to be installed with a robot, so it's not going to burst blood vessels or cause trauma. The needle for insertion is 24 microns in diameter, much smaller than the state-of-the-art in deep brain stimulation. Such surgeries had been done before for deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's sufferers, though these traditional methods have a 1 in 100 chance of causing a severe brain hemorrhage. A smaller footprint should make things much safer. The state-of-the-art for Parkinson's deep brain stimulation has around 10 electrodes. The Neuralink contains thousands of electrodes. These electrodes need to be less than 60 microns away to detect a firing neuron and serve as the interface that reads data from the brain and sends data to the brain. processor for making all of this work is something called the N1 chip. The N1 chip reads analog brain signals, amplifies them, digitizes them, processes them, and then sends it out to a pod device behind the ear. The pod device is the only thing that's going to be upgraded, and the implants stay as they are. Remove the pod and everything shuts off. The N1 chip is 4 by 5 millimeters, low power, and has built-in hardware for processing brain signals. It can read 20,000 brain samples per second. So these are real raw signals coming from a neural link hooked up to a brain. What the scientists are looking for are spikes in voltage when a neuron fires. This is the fundamental element of communication within the brain. An algorithm can detect these spikes in real time, decode them, and make sense of the vast amounts of data coming in. The system can not only read data from the brain, but also write data. To do this, a signal is run through an electrode near a neuron, causing that neuron to fire. The information inputted into the brain doesn't have to be perfect because of neuroplasticity. This means the brain learns how to use the new information. The original plan for the Neuralink is to connect 4 N1 chips with thousands of electrodes coming from each chip. Signals will be sent via Bluetooth to the pod device behind the ear, and it will be controlled by a phone. The first goal is to get patients to be able to control a mobile device, a phone, mouse, or computer keyboard. The Neuralink will show up as a regular Bluetooth keyboard or mouse. The first application for the Neuralink is to tap into the primary motor cortex, the part of the brain that sends signals down to the spinal cord and onto the muscles to drive movement. It will start with simple things like a mouse and keyboard, but could also be used to read signals from all movement, even speech. And finally, it could be used to restore movement of someone's own body. The materials science team wants to use materials or properties that would make the brain not only accept the Neuralink, but think that it's part of itself. It's fairly controversial, but early tests on monkeys have been successful.
We wish that we didn't have to work with animals, right? That we just wish that wasn't like a step in the process. And we try to be very careful and thoughtful about it and do it as efficiently as possible. Because we believe that the benefit to humanity is in the end, like the benefits outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, I mean, but we have made a monkey has been able to control the computer with its brain. Just, yeah. FYI.
I didn't realize we were running that result today, but there it goes.
Human patient trials are set to start by the end of 2020. The target patient will be a quadriplegic due to a spinal cord injury. The main hurdle so far has been FDA approval for implantable devices. So the future of Neuralink will be in 3 stages. Stage 1 is to understand and treat brain disorders, starting with people with serious medical needs. Stage 2, preserve and enhance one's own brain. Stage 3, full brain-machine interfaces. In the future, there could even be a kind of app store for programs that you can download and control with your brain. Other possibilities from the presentation include a new kind of communication, kind of like telepathy, or downloading the memories of someone who's familiar with a city so that when you go to that city, you feel familiar with it too. The possibilities are kind of endless.
We developed this robot that can rapidly and precisely insert hundreds of individual threads representing thousands of distinct electrodes into the cortex in less than an hour. This tool allows a surgeon to aim between the blood vessels that cover the surface of the brain with micron-scale precision. Here, the robot is selecting individual electrode threads and placing them into the brain in the pre-planned location with remarkable accuracy and repeatability. When you think of traditional neurosurgery, you probably think of something very invasive. Traditional surgery on the brain isn't something that patients ever look forward to or are excited about, except in the most dire circumstances. Usually a clamp is attached to the skull to keep it rigidly immobilized to the operating table. We often shave all or most of the patient's hair. Patients can end up with large visible scars. At Neuralink, we want to create an entirely different patient experience, something more like LASIK. We even want this to be possible under conscious sedation. That means you can get rid of the complexity and the risk of general anesthesia, as well as many of the unpleasant side effects, nausea, sore throat from a breathing tube. But our aim is to simplify the procedure, down to the injection of local anesthetic, a very small opening in the skin, a painless opening in the skull below, quick and precise placement of threads into the cortex, and then we fill that hole in the skull with the sensor, allowing the scalp to be closed up over it.
But there's no reason in principle that we can't reach all of motor cortex. And that would give us access to any movement that a person thinks about, any movement at all. A person could imagine running or dancing or even kung fu, and we would be able to decode that signal. What Neuralink wants to get better access to that information, both to repair broken brain circuits and also to ultimately give us better access to better connections to the world, to each other, and to ourselves. Thank you.
Global AI will require a new kind of computer, a quantum computer. Jordy Rose is the founder of D-Wave, makers of the world's first commercially available quantum computer. Here, he explains the connection between AI and quantum computing.
Jordy, I don't understand much about quantum computing except that it's supposed to be the next big thing in power and in speed, and that you are the only company in the world now actually making one. These are really big deals. They come in at about $15 or $20 million a piece.
Something like that.
And have been bought by major American research and corporations.
That's right, correct.
All right, Jordy.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. So quantum computing is a very technical subject, and I'm not going to talk a lot about the specific details, of which I'm glad. I'm sure you're glad. There are literally tens of thousands of some of the brightest people in the world today trying to build these machines and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why. In my last 15 years of working on this type of stuff, I found that scientists divide up into two categories of zealots about this field. The first half are people who are absolutely entranced by the physics of these things. This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes, and that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. There's another type of person who tends to come from the computer science side that's like, yeah, okay, that's all great. But there's a different thing going on here, which is just as exciting, if not more, and that these machines that supposedly can do this wild stuff, let's forget about how they work, if you could build one, could solve problems that you could never, ever solve with any computer of the sort that we build. If you took every single atom of silicon in the world and made the most sophisticated conventional Intel-style processor that you could build, there are problems we know of that I could write down on a sheet of paper that you could never, ever, ever solve with that thing, that you could with this kind of machine. So that's very exciting. So you may think, well, this is all fine and dandy, but aren't these things in the realm of theory and speculation kind of in the same regime as other futuristic things you may have heard of, which may be allowed by the laws of physics but aren't here yet? That's not true. There are, in fact, many of these machines deployed now in openly available research centers following the model that was used to introduce supercomputers to the world. They're not terrifically powerful yet, but they're doing something completely different than what your computer does. And that thing is like flight. It gives these computers access to these new resources, maybe you could call them parallel universes, in order to do something that you couldn't otherwise do. And that's not the only one. In fact, the one I'm going to come back to and talk to in the context of the story that I'm wrapping this in was recently installed at NASA. And Google was the primary interested party that pulled this whole thing together. And this one is really exciting to me, because what they're going to do is apply this machine to an area that I think is fundamentally important. It's a crux of our future as humans, and that's, can we build machines like us? So building machines like us might be possible. I certainly believe it is. I might be wrong. But what I do know is that the types of approaches that people are taking now to build intelligent machines benefit immensely from what this machine that we've built does best. So what this center is about is applying this beautiful new computational idea in the service of trying to make intelligent machines. Now, I can't think of anything personally any cooler than trying to use quantum computers to build intelligent machines, so this is very exciting to me. Steve Jurvetson has been a longtime friend and investor in the company, and for those of you who don't know him, he's a Silicon Valley investor who's probably the smartest VC that I know of, and certainly the one that's the most attuned to technological trends. He's on the board of SpaceX, Tesla, Synthetic Genomics, which is Craig Venter's company, is trying to build artificial life, and D-Wave, and that's it. And this is his particularly poetic way of framing the difference between the machines we build and conventional computers. This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. I believe that humanity is on the cusp of the most important technological, societal revolution that's ever occurred. And that's when we got to the point where the machines that we build outpace us in every respect. I don't mean that they're better calculators. I don't mean that they're better at searching. I mean everything. And I think that we're very close. And my prediction is that within 15 years, we will have machines that outpace humans in everything.
February 2019, D-Wave announced their next-generation Pegasus quantum processor chip, calling it the world's most connected commercial quantum system. It will be available in 2020. Now, another excerpt from Eliyahu Ben David, Prepare for the World of 2030, dated March 7, 2016.
This language just really gets me because it sounds like some kind of a preacher or something. It says, what kind of sensation would you experience when your brain is directly connected to the global hive mind? Sublime amplification, cognitive ecstasy, and new horizons of perception, expanded consciousness, and the end of suffering from our human condition. We're rapidly approaching a pivotal moment in our history, as many scientists call singularity, transcendence, or omega point, when we may become so much more. And one version of it, singular planetary consciousness. So this is their idea, I think, of heaven. A singular planetary consciousness.
Global hive mind? Surely that is not possible with over 3 billion people having no internet access. That problem is being solved by, you guessed it, 2030.
On the 24th of May, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 rocket filled with 60 satellites into space. This marked the beginning of their ambitious new project called Starlink, which aims to provide high-quality broadband internet to the most isolated parts of the planet, while also providing low-latency connectivity to already well-connected cities. SpaceX aimed to make their broadband as accessible as possible, claiming that anyone will be able to connect to their network if they buy the pizza box-sized antenna, which SpaceX is developing themselves. This launch of 60 satellites was just the first of many. SpaceX has 12,000 satellites planned for launch over the next decade, dramatically increasing the total amount of spacecraft around Earth's orbit. This will cost SpaceX billions of dollars, so they must have a good reason for doing so.
Elon Musk is working to revolutionize the internet by building a global communication system that will blanket the world in Wi-Fi. He plans to send a mega constellation of nearly 12,000 satellites into outer space, which will orbit above Earth and provide internet connectivity to the surface below.
You could be in a jungle in South America, and if you had just an internet link somehow, you'd have access to all of humanity's information. So it would actually effectively create a superorganism,
While satellite internet has been around for a while, the ones currently sitting in space are 22,000 miles high over the equator, and with a distance that long, it has meant connectivity for us Earthlings are unreliable and slow.
And I thought the internet would be something that would dramatically affect the future of humanity. It would be like acquiring a nervous system, and whereas previously communication would have to occur almost by osmosis.
And if Musk manages to meet his goal, the new initiative could give the world internet speeds that are around 40 times faster than what we're experiencing now, and it won't matter whether you're in the middle of a city or deep in the Amazon jungle. But with all this potential for a faster way for the world to communicate, it's perhaps no wonder that the competition from rival companies is heating up. SpaceX has so far managed to keep Starlink's technology from its research and development to serious mass production under wraps. But the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, has also approved requests from the likes of OneWeb, Telesat and Amazon to establish big satellite internet constellations of their own.
Just about half the world has limited to no communications at all. And OneWeb is designed, it's a big project, but OneWeb is designed to bring internet access right to the places in the most rural of environments. High-speed internet access, 50 megabits per second, 30 milliseconds latency. So it's identical to a cable modem without being constrained to having to live in the city.
It's not known yet just how much it will cost people to use the Starlink network. But Musk has previously said it's likely to be a relatively cheap way for 3 billion people who don't already have internet access to get online.
The global elite are pulling out all the stops to make all of this happen in time for the 2030 agenda. But why? What do they have to gain from making all humanity into a global hive mind?
No, this alien's not rocketing through space. It will be born right here on Earth, a sentient AI that will emerge in a research lab at Google or Facebook or a top university. How do I know it will emerge? I know because I have billions of neurons in my head. And I know that research labs are spending billions of dollars creating artificial brains composed of billions of artificial neurons. Mother Nature has already proven that this approach works. It will happen. An alien will arrive, and it will be smarter than us. And when that happens, it'll be our next big evolutionary pressure point. one that again requires us to get smarter, much smarter, or lose our position as the top intelligence in our environment. I know there are those who say we just need to be careful and we can prevent this alien from ever hatching in a lab. There are others who say we just need to put controls in place to be sure that this alien is helpful and friendly, eager to do our bidding. But honestly, we humans have a pretty bad track record for containing dangerous technologies. So what do we do? Personally, I've been worried about this problem for 25 years, ever since I took my very first course on artificial neural networks back in grad school. And for a long time, I didn't think there was a solution. It turns out the answer goes all the way back to the birds and the bees, and fish and ants. All of these creatures have evolved methods of amplifying their intelligence by thinking together in systems. It's why birds flock, and fish school, and bees swarm. They're smarter together than alone. No, I'm not talking about crowdsourcing like we humans do by taking votes and polls and surveys. I'm talking about forming systems, real-time systems, with feedback loops so deeply interconnected that a new intelligence forms, an emergent intelligence with its own personality and intellect. I'm talking about forming a hive mind, which is why I asked myself a big question. Why can't we humans amplify our intelligence now? If birds and bees and fish can form a brain of brains, why can't people do it? That's what I wanted to know. So a few years ago, I founded a unique artificial intelligence company called Unanimous AI. We build hive minds. So let me show you what we've been up to. This is a natural swarm. And over the last few years, we've been modeling how swarms like this amplify the intelligence of groups. And we've been using those models to create the algorithms and interfaces to allow humans to form similar swarms online. This is a human swarm. It's about 100 people all working together to move that glass puck. Each of the little magnets you see is controlled by a person logged in from somewhere around the world. By moving their magnets, they're varying their opinions in real time, pushing and pulling on the system in much the same way that honeybees do by waggle dancing. So how can a swarm like this answer questions? Let me give you some examples. Last year, CBS Interactive challenged us to predict the Kentucky Derby. And not just the winner, the first 4 horses in order. In horse racing, that's called the superfecta, and last year it went off at 540 to 1 odds. Now, we didn't know anything about horse racing. We had never done anything like this before, but we were game, so we formed a swarm of 20 horse racing enthusiasts. Not experts, just enthusiasts, and we had them think together as a system to predict the winners of the race. So here's a swarm predicting the first place finisher, Nyquist. We did the same thing for second place, third place, fourth place, and then the reporter wrote a story and published the results. She even went to the Kentucky Derby, placed a bet on the superfecta, and tweeted out her ticket, which put some pressure on us. So how did we do? We nailed it. And anybody who had placed a $20 bet, thank you. The long-term potential is likely much greater. After all, if a swarm of bees can solve complex problems that would challenge a human brain, a swarm of humans should be able to solve problems that we can't even conceive. We should be able to form a true superintelligence. And because the building blocks are people, tapping not just our knowledge, but our values and morals and sensibilities, the resulting superintelligence will not be alien, it will be human, just smarter and wiser. So the next time somebody uses the phrase hive mind as a negative, remember this: if honeybees could observe how we humans make big group decisions, like electing our leaders, or resolving our conflicts, or planning for our future, they might think we're the primitive ones, but not for long.
Now, another excerpt from Eliyahu ben David, Prepare for the World of 2030, dated March 7th, 2016.
This reminds me of Revelation 14:11. They have no rest day and night, those who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. We've talked about the mark as being involved with the commercial system in the one world government. And indeed it is, the scriptures tell us that. But what if it's more than that? What if receiving the mark is actually an irreversible entry point into the singularity? In other words, you receive the mark so that you can become one of them. And then your mind becomes part of the global hive mind of the beast. We're rapidly approaching that pivotal moment, it tells us. Could what they call the singularity and what the scriptures talk about with the mark of the beast actually be talking about the same thing, but from a different perspective? And you see, what a trick. Because what they're looking for out of this is ecstasy, right? Transcendence. Becoming part of the universal whole, the force, or whatever. But what mind is it that they're actually going to be tapping into and becoming a part of? This is the mind of the Antichrist. What kind of mind does he have? Ultimate evil, ultimate torment. When it talks about no rest day or night, could that not actually explain the experience one would have once they were connected brain to brain with the Antichrist and all of his supporters in the world? Would that not also explain why, once a person had accepted the mark, they were eternally damned? Because they would have left their humanity behind in order to do this. And if you're not a human, you can't be saved. The Son of Man died for human beings, not for post-human beings, not for robots. And so in leaving the humanity behind and spurning their Creator and joining with this hive mind, giving up their human spirit, they're giving up any chance, any hope of eternal salvation. Exactly what they're going for, right? Immortality is what they're going to lose. The new creature in Yeshua Messiah. The scripture says, therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creation. The old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. This is who we are. We're not always in touch with this truth, that we are a new creature. And you know what we need? Some consciousness raising, right? We need to become more aware of the fact that in Messiah we are a new creature. And as a new creature in Messiah, we are equipped with everything we need to handle that whole cadre of freaky bad boys we were looking at. It says here in Revelation, the beast and his hordes will war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. They also will overcome who are with him, called and chosen and faithful. We don't have to be afraid of those guys. We don't have to be afraid of the beast and the hive mind, because we're new creatures in Yeshua Messiah. We have everything we need to overcome. And that whole godless world will be overcome by Messiah and the overcomers at his side. This is the promise. He who overcomes will be arrayed in white garments, and I will in no way blot his name out of the book of life. And I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. This is the promise to the overcomers. So, you see, we have quite a dichotomy coming up, don't we? We have this whole crazy world ahead of us. Now, is this not really crazier than any science fiction movie could ever be? When you look at this, this is where the demonic forces and the elite people of this world are taking us to. They're taking us to this. But Yahweh is going to use this to glorify himself, to exercise justice against evil, and to save the righteous. And to save the earth from these people. Now you might think, that picture of that knight, he looks so noble and strong and powerful. That's not me, though. I'm not that powerful. I get kind of a pot belly. I don't see how I could really deal with those kind of things we were talking about. Well, like I say, this is where we need an awareness to come upon us. You know, Paul saw where we were headed. And he had around him believers who were not perfect. In fact, a lot of them really didn't have the full understanding of who they were. And interestingly, he didn't scold them about it. He didn't grab their shirt and shake them and say, "Why don't you know who you are?" You know what he did? He prayed for them. And this is his prayer. And as I read this, I know he's praying for me. He's praying for you. And we can pray along with him as we hear what he says. He says, "For this cause I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Yeshua, the Messiah, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, that you may be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inward man, that Messiah may dwell in your hearts through faith." You see, when you see this knight here, looks powerful, noble. He's got his armor on. He's ready for the battle. That doesn't have to be you on the outside. That can be your inward man. You know, you can be kind of like Yoda, right? Remember that in the movies? Get this little green guy who doesn't look like he could do anything, and it turns out he's got all this power because it comes from inside. Well, that's true for believers. That's just a story about Yoda. This is true for believers. On the outside, you may seem to be wasting away. You might have physical problems, troubles in your life. You might have foibles and weaknesses. But you can be powerful in the Spirit, in your inward man. And that is where you need to have the power in order to deal with the things that are coming. And it says that Messiah may dwell in your hearts through faith. You see, you might not think you're powerful. How about if you have Messiah himself living in your heart? How powerful is he? How wise is he? He's all powerful and all wise. If he's living in your heart, you can call on that at any time you need. How much more power do you need? The prayer goes on. To the end that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be strengthened. We'll just stop right there. Rooted and grounded in love. What does that mean? Rooted and grounded. That's your foundation, right? If you're rooted and grounded in love, everything surrounding you is his love. If you are totally surrounded in his love, if that is your foundation, what can touch you? Grounded, rooted in love. What a protection that is for us. That he may be strengthened to comprehend with all the holy ones what is the depth and length and height and depth, and to know Messiah's love, which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. You know, it's interesting that the world of the elite is all about knowledge, isn't it? It's all about knowing everything. And I'll tell you why, because that's the most they can do, is know everything that they can uncover to know. But I'll tell you what they don't know. They don't know the love of Yeshua Messiah. Because you can't know that as data, right? To know the love of Messiah, this is a love that surpasses knowledge. It's on a whole higher plane than knowledge. No post-human is ever going to know anything about the love of Messiah. It is outside and beyond what you can know that way. You can have that right now. You can walk in that. You can live in that love right now because you've got that love. All you need to do is trust it, right? Trust him. Believe him from day to day, and you can experience that love. And the great thing about it is when you're filled with that love, you're filled with all the fullness of God. You know, a cyborg, come on. You'll be tromping over those guys before breakfast. Filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. What power is that? What power is that? That's resurrection power. Resurrection power. It lives inside of you. I don't care if you're 95 years old. If you belong to Yeshua Messiah, you've got resurrection power. Even the grave can't stop you. So don't be afraid of this world. Don't be afraid of what the enemy can throw against you. You are ready for anything he can throw against you, if only you will believe in who you are and what you've got. To him be the glory in the assembly and in Messiah Yeshua to all generations forever and ever. And I might add, even unto the final generation. I'm stoked. I'm encouraged. I'm excited to face the world of 2030. And I hope you are too.
Hello, this is Judah. Eliyahu, my dad, and I worked on this presentation together. The day after the excerpt from March 7th, 2016 message you just heard, the speaker died. That next day, the speaker, Eliyahu ben David, suffered a widowmaker heart attack. and died on the table in the hospital under the care of a state-of-the-art cardiac team. Eliyahu's blood was literally congealing in his veins. The lead doctor of the cardiac team later said it was beyond his expertise and the latest technology to revive Eliyahu, saying he could not take credit for the amazing recovery from death. Eliyahu says that's where the resurrection life within him kicked in, bringing him back to life again. He says this proves everything he had said the day before about the power of the new creation and resurrection life in Messiah that you have just heard. 1 week later, Eliyahu was recorded on video explaining his amazing experience. You can find the video report at zion.org. TSIYON.org.
Was this video informative? Click the like button below to help spread the word to others. Feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss out on more amazing content from Eliyahu ben David.
For whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that we, through the patience and comfort of the Scriptures, might have hope. You know, the apostles, they were Torah scholars. This is why I'm doing Zion Academy. The lessons include 2-hour audio programs and quiz modules. All the lessons in the Torah can be applied to us today. Not to mention, they open up the renewed covenant scriptures in a whole new level, much like the apostles had understanding of the Torah. Plus, I can do the courses in my own time, at my own pace, with no prerequisites, and at a very low cost. I can do them here. Or here.
Zion Academy students are provided with study materials, the Zion Messianic Scriptures, in-depth verse-by-verse programs, and quizzes with your final grade and a certificate at the end of the course. Zion Academy also offers assignments for students who would like to opt in to take part in the Zion Tabernacle live Shabbat meetings. Become immersed in the Torah. Find out how you can become a Zion Academy student at zion.org.